In a quiet London street, there stands an old flat with rent so cheap, it feels like fortune has smiled on anyone who moves in. But those who cross its doorway soon discover it isn't a blessing, it's a curse. At a certain hour of the night, when the city falls silent, something inside awakens, something that will not let the living rest. And once you see it, you can never forget it. Emma Clarke had never lived in London before. For 26 years, she had known only the green fields and quiet lanes of Devon. But when her freelance writing career started to gain momentum, she decided she needed the city, its energy, its opportunities, its endless stories. The flat she found on Holloway Lane was not impressive. The building, a crumbling Victorian terrace, leaned slightly as though the years had pressed down too hard. Its bricks were weathered, its staircases narrow and uneven, and the front door screeched when opened. But the rent was cheap, impossibly cheap for London, and Emma convinced herself that the imperfections gave it character. The landlord, Mr. Whitmore, met her on the evening she moved in. He was a tall, bony man in his 70s, with skin like parchment and a voice that cracked like brittle wood. "Flat number 3, he said, sliding the key across his palm. "It has history, but you'll be fine." Emma raised a brow. "History? Every old building has stories," he muttered, eyes fixed on the stairwell behind her. "Don't let them trouble you." She laughed politely, thinking he was eccentric, perhaps lonely. Still, the remark left a faint unease at the back of her mind. Flat number 3 was on the second floor. The corridor leading to it was dim, the wallpaper faded into a patternless gray. Inside, the flat smelled faintly of damp and dust, as though it hadn't been lived in for years. The bedroom window rattled with every gust of wind. The kitchen tiles were cracked. Yet, when Emma set her bags down, she smiled. It was small, yes, but it was hers. That night, she unpacked her books, brewed a cup of tea, and sat at the little desk by the window. From the alley below came the distant sounds of London, car horns, laughter, the occasional shout. For the first time in her life, she felt she was in the heart of something bigger than herself. When the hallway creaked later that night, she assumed it was the neighbor. When the faint sound of a door tapping came at 3 a.m., she told herself it was just old wood shifting. And when she thought she heard a whisper, so soft she couldn't make out the words, she pulled her blanket tighter and repeated the same phrase over and over in her head. "It's just the building. Just the building." The days that followed were busy. Emma explored her new neighborhood, found a cozy cafe around the corner, and spent hours walking the streets, notebook in hand. But nights were different. Nights belonged to Holloway Lane. On her third night, as she wrote at her desk, the light above her flickered. She sighed, assuming it was faulty wiring. But then the bulb went out completely, plunging the room into darkness. Her laptop screen glowed faintly, reflecting her own startled face. And in that reflection, behind her chair, she saw it. A shadow. A human-shaped figure. Emma spun around so quickly, the chair nearly toppled. Nothing. Only the silence of the room and the faint hum of traffic outside. She laughed nervously, rubbing her temples. "You're tired, Clarke," she whispered. "You're imagining things." But the following night, the same thing happened. Flicker. Darkness. And in the window, the shadow behind her. Always just for a second, gone the moment she turned. Sleep became difficult. Emma tossed and turned, waking repeatedly at the same hour, 3:12 a.m. Sometimes to tapping sounds on her bedroom door. Sometimes to faint footsteps in the corridor outside her flat. Once to the unmistakable sound of humming. A woman's voice, low and haunting, as though it drifted from another room. But she lived alone. She tried rational explanations. The neighbors, the old pipes, the wiring. Yet when she asked Mrs. Green, the elderly woman downstairs, whether she ever heard humming in the night, the widow only shook her head and muttered something under her breath. It was on a rainy Thursday afternoon that Emma truly began to worry. She had bumped into Mrs. Green in the hallway, a kindly-looking woman in her 70s with sharp blue eyes. They exchanged pleasantries before Emma mentioned her sleepless nights. "You live in number 3?" Mrs. Green asked, her voice low. "Yes." The old woman's face drained of color. She leaned closer. "My dear, you must be careful. That flat is troubled." Emma forced a laugh. "What do you mean?" "They never tell newcomers. 30 years ago, a young woman lived there, Charlotte Hayes, a pianist. They said she killed herself, hanging, but no one believed it. People swore they heard her screams nights before she died. Some say she was pushed." Emma's skin prickled. "That's just old gossip." Mrs. Green shook her head. Tenants don't stay long in that flat. You won't either. That evening, curiosity gnawed at Emma. She searched online. Charlotte Hayes Holloway Lane. The first result was a 1989 newspaper clipping, promising pianist found dead in London flat. Charlotte Hayes, 24, had been discovered hanging in her bedroom. Official cause of death, suicide. But the article noted neighbors' claims of strange disturbances, music in the night, screams, shadowy figures in the windows. Emma's hands trembled as she closed the laptop. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. The dreams began soon after. Emma would wake drenched in sweat, her heart pounding, the echo of piano notes still ringing in her ears. In the dreams, she saw Charlotte, pale, dark-haired, her face twisted in silent agony as she reached out across a void of shadows. One night, Emma woke to the sound of the lullaby. It was soft, almost gentle, but it came from inside her bedroom. She froze, too afraid to move. Her lamp flickered on its own, illuminating faint words on the wall, written in condensation as though by an invisible hand. "Get out!" Emma scrambled from the bed, fumbling for her phone. But when she looked back, the wall was bare, clean, as though nothing had been there. The next day, she considered leaving, yet a strange compulsion rooted her to the flat. She told herself she was a writer, that she needed to experience things, to confront her fears. But deep inside, she knew something was binding her to that place, something that wanted her there. Emma visited the local library, determined to understand. She pored over old archives, flipping through dusty newspapers. What she found was worse than she imagined. The building at Holloway Lane had a dark history long before Charlotte Hayes. In the late 1800s, it had been a boarding house. Multiple deaths occurred there, unexplained fires, suicides, a string of vanishings. Strangely, most were linked to the same unit, flat number 3. The librarian, an elderly man with deep lines etched into his face, noticed her interest. "You're staying there?" he asked quietly. Emma hesitated, then nodded. The man's eyes darkened. "Leave. That house doesn't give its people back." That night, Emma set up her phone to record while she slept. She wanted proof. Hours passed, nothing unusual. Then, at 3:12 a.m., the bedroom door creaked open by itself. A shadow glided across the room. Emma stirred, opening her eyes. The humming grew louder. At the foot of her bed stood Charlotte Hayes. Her eyes were hollow pits, her mouth stretching impossibly wide as the lullaby warped into a distorted scream. Emma screamed and bolted from the bed. The walls shook, the window slammed shut, the lights flickered violently. As she ran for the door, invisible hands clawed at her arms, cold and relentless. She tore free, stumbling barefoot into the corridor. Neighbors awoke to her cries. By the time they reached the flat, Emma was outside on the pavement, sobbing, her arms scratched red. They searched flat number 3, but found nothing. Only Emma's phone, lying on the floor, still recording. An empty, silent room. Emma left Holloway Lane the next day. She packed only essentials, abandoning furniture and clothes. She told herself it was just trauma, that she would heal. But years later, she still wakes at 3:12 a.m., some nights to silence, other nights to the sound of a piano, faint and distant. And every mirror she passes, every dark window at night, carries the same reflection. Not just her own, but the pale figure of a woman standing just behind her shoulder, Charlotte Hayes.